Warm greetings. Welcome to Wednesdays for Water. We are a citizens collective aiming to walk and talk water. We try to meet every week and connect people with various water worries and wisdoms. And in the process, we wish to curate future water warriors. The way we talk about trivial things for hours, water too needs walking and talking to address the rising water distresses. The way Wednesdays for Water is conceptualized as a prime time show, it wishes to make water everybody's business. The idea of the series was conceptualized in August 2020, and by the end of the year, the team and the structure was pretty much in shape. We started in April 2021 with Dr. Rajendra Singh's inaugural speech. We wish to bring science and society together, and therefore we try to bring in every session either a policymaker or practitioner and a researcher or academician. We also think that future generation is crucial and therefore they have presence in each session. We are going stronger with every week now with session on either quiz, couple of weeks of hard talks and a week of soft session of art and music. There is a simple structure for each session of quiz, hard session and soft session which are moderated by the core team member. Here is a glimpse of what we call as hard sessions and soft sessions. Besides walking and talking water, worries and wisdoms collectively, we see this as a platform to cross-connect and expand our network and explore possible collaborations. We are also making notes to publish both scientific and non-scientific work. Here is a glimpse of some of our writings. You may reach us through email, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and also look at our website www.w4w.in. We look forward to your suggestions and comments to make the series more meaningful and engaging. And meanwhile, we hope that you appreciate today's session. Recorded. Okay. We are here to the next session of Wednesdays for Water, and today we are talking about water and agriculture, and we have as usual in all our Wednesdays for Water series, we have three guests to discuss with us the topic. Dr. Muthaiah Muruganandam, and then we have Dr. Sri Kumar S, and we also have our discussant, dear Prutha. So Dr. Muruganandam is basically a principal scientist, and I get to know him during our Fulbright year. So we were same year Fulbrighters, that is 2016-17. He is at present the principal scientist at the Indian Institute of Soil and Water Conservation, that is ICAR. And he is also looking at various aspects, and I keep seeing in his social media platforms the kind of initiatives he's working on the ground. So he's a very I will say not only multidisciplinary, but a transdisciplinary practitioner, scientist, I will say. He has been involved also as part of Fulbright in the previous year, as I mentioned, with with Dakota State University of Brookings. So he is going to bring the highlights of how the government as well as how the scientific community looks into water and its relationship with the agricultural practices in the country. Then we have Dr. Sri Kumar S. I know him from a political party, which is Socialist Political Party. And we have met few times in different platforms. He has a PhD in chemical engineering from IISc Bangalore. And he also has taught in the National Institute of Technology in Karnataka. And interestingly, why he is invited today here is that he is a now hardcore farmer and not only working on a sustainable farming style, but he is also self-driven to build a farming community that works towards sustainable farming. And the farming community which he is developing near Nakre Udupi is called the Sangatya. I hope I have pronounced it right.
Sangatya. It is Sangatya.
Yeah. Okay, Sangatya. And we do have our discussant today, but I will take the discussant intro later once she's around. So the rules of the game goes like this. You're going to pitch your points in the given time. And then we will take it further from there. We would like to have more discussions with all the participants. So over to you, Murugan. You are the first. Thank you.
Very good afternoon to everyone, and you are all doing wonderful job of connecting people and bringing different topics to discuss on water and water related issues, so that it can be suitably compiled and communicated to different people, including the stakeholders and the general public as a whole. So it's heads off to you, all those who are involved and interested in the program. And now agriculture, water and agriculture, as we all agree that water is as commodity, that is for sure, is it not? Though India is in a convenient position of having kind of sufficient water because of this annual rainfall, which is slightly higher than the world average. India receives something around 1100 millimeter annual rainfall, which is higher than the world average, with which India is having a adequate water resource for all its needs. But the requirement, the problem is mismanagement and the recognition of the problems and the recognition of the resource and its features, and understanding the water as a wonder commodity that needs to be conserved for the present generation and the future in a sustainable manner. We all know that it is very plenty. 70% of the area globe is covered with water, and only more than 97% of the 70% is in oceans, and only we are left with only 3%, less than 3%, and of which also a little over than 0.5% is in freshwater, in a freshwater and liquid form, usable form, and of which majority is in underground, and which we are heavily depending on, and rest is very meager. 0.3% is surface water, on which we are depending all our source of agriculture and drinking, domestic and industrial also. So though it is plenty and it's scarcer, and it again it varies between different regions and different regions and different agroecological situations. We have got varying water availability and water use scenario because of this varying rainfall pattern. Though our rainfall is good enough of 1100 millimeter annually, it is varying between different regions, and again it occurs within 3 to 4 months, June to September. So 3 to 4 months only you will find water everywhere, and rest of the months there won't be water. So water scarcity will be there. So how do we manage water scarce and water excess situations? So accordingly, we need to devise kind of managerial strategies to conserve and use them effectively. In that process, only our institute, particularly Indian Institute of Soil and Water Conservation, is coming up with various water conservation technologies, so that the soil loss and runoff is conserved for many different purposes through many different technologies, including water harvesting, in situ moisture conservation, all that. So that water is conserved where it falls, and it can be used for various purposes. And conservation of soil moisture is also one of the issue of increasing agriculture production with water scarce scenarios, that we are evolving different technologies for increasing agriculture production using minimum water or conserved water. So we have got different technologies for particularly water harvesting or water conservation technologies for arable lands, non-arable lands like forest, degraded lands. There are some bioengineering measures, funding and trenching and situation specific various technologies that we can discuss at length. And along with we are suggesting agronomic measures to conserve means promote less water demanding crops, so that maximum production is attained with minimum water available, and promoting integrated farming systems and components. So we are evolving various components and interventions and technologies and testing in the farmers field, and we are advocating to the stakeholders, including primary stakeholders, farmers and executives and field functionaries in the different state governments and various state departments. That is our nature of work in our institute. And as regard to then we are focusing, and now the country is in a position to manage our water resources because of the inherent problems of a growing population, growing demands for food production, food supplies, and nutritional insecurity problems. All that brings increased demand on water resources, which are already scarce, also already reducing because of our own actions and climatic or natural phenomena. One hand, these are population growth and urbanization increases water demand and depletes the groundwater, and because of our excessive extraction for various purposes, mainly for agriculture. And on the other hand, in the name of urbanization and development, we are draining out all the water resources available nearby in our settlement and in a rural environment. So water resources and water ambience has become almost scarce across the country. Everywhere, every one of us would have experienced the situation of losing water resources nearby. Earlier, it was used to be wetlands and productive kind of water resources, or ponds and tanks and kind of small pitches, all that. So now they are no more available. They are lost to kind of urbanization and real estate businesses everywhere. So one of those, both hand means extraction of groundwater resources, which is very minimum and which is the maximum majority source for our developmental purpose, that is also getting lost. And we are also not allowing the groundwater to get recharged because of this draining the water resources for different purposes. So we are not allowing the groundwater to replenish in its own potential, so that it can be sustainable for our own purpose in time to come. So we are disturbing the hydrological cycle in many different ways, and by adopting different mismanagement, and farmers are of course traditional wisdom and indigenous knowledge, indigenous practices are worthwhile to adopt, and but at the same time we cannot continue these unproductive or kind of unsustainable water use practices and water delivery and water use practices, particularly in agriculture and related sectors. The majority of our agriculture depends on rain-fed agriculture farming only, and our institute address this caters to the needs of the rain-fed agriculture, which emphasize more on water harvesting and water conservation through many different approaches and technologies. And but the irrigated agriculture, whatever we have got minimum something around 20% of our agriculture depends on irrigated agriculture, and that also having this irrigation delivery and kind of water use efficiency in many different irrigation system is very poor. Normally we often, majority of the farmers still use for flooding rather than adopting kind of advanced technologies of drip irrigation and kind of sprinklers and so pitcher or pot irrigation, and adopting conservation measures. Because I know, as I've been farming before coming to this service, I am from the farm family. I know our farming scenarios and situation in rural background, how we are using our water scarce resources in a unsustainable manner, majority. And still, of course, these advanced technologies of drip irrigation and micro irrigations, all that coming up, but it is not up to the mark which is required. And that is where our extension agencies and technological institutions should come in hand in hand, and should take to the farmers, maybe through youngsters and youth and NGOs and other diverse kind of institutional support mechanisms, and through policy support, we should educate the farming communities to adopt advanced and recent advancements in water conservation and effective use of available water, so that a maximum crop can be produced with minimum water and at the same time without affecting the soil health or degrading the soil resources. So that is how our emphasis has been so far in these 60, 70 years of travel at this institute. And Baki, then I think I will have interaction and I can answer your questions. And now there are number of modern techniques, advanced techniques of irrigation facilities and other farming techniques of promoting integrated farming systems, and which involves which produces many different commodities or crops using the same amount of water or with minimum water, and with which this ultimate waste is reduced and maximum crop is produced using, or maximum agricultural production is achieved with the minimum water or minimum resource use, and this is environment friendly also. So many different integrated farming systems have been developed at the country and we are promoting as well. And other than that, kind of biofloc is another technology for fish farming, all that, which uses minimum water and produces more from the lesser areas, because areas also getting reduced because of this man land or man resource ratio decreasing due to population and urbanization. So we need to compromise with available resources for our agricultural production also. So in that context, integrated situation specific, location specific and farmer specific integrated farming systems and the different components of farming farm commodities and modern techniques like bioflocs or kind of water conservation products like hydrogel, which absorbs water and which helps moisture conservation in agriculture fields, and it retains moisture and water for prolonged period and supplies moisture to crops slowly for longer period, with which agriculture production is improved. And there are many different soil amendments like particularly nanotechnology based soil amendments, nano clay and different zeolites, all that is available, which can improve soil moisture availability for longer period. And again, there are products like biological based or these seaweed based biopolymers, and they absorb excessive nutrients and phosphorus and nitrogen, other pollutants and heavy metals from the water, and which means making the water available or making the water potable or irrigatable for the field. So in that context, many different nanotechnological products and commodities and technologies come in handy, which we need to ponder on, and we need to delve, and research institutions and extension agencies should work to come up with many different technologies and take to the farmers, on which many different institutions are working. And this is a potential area that one can think of, and to which these youngsters and young youth forces can be channelized. And again, educating the farmers is a major thrust now towards this water conservation and minimum use of water, and adoption of improved and resource conserving, water conserving technologies. Ours being a diverse and vast country, we need to have an extensive force and diverse dynamic forces that can educate these our huge farming communities on which the entire country is depending. Our agriculture is a major stake for our economy and social and ecological progress as well. Unlike other developed countries, ours still is depending on agriculture for our economy and GDP, because agriculture contributes to maximum to the GDP other than compared to other kind of foreign USA and other developed countries. So we are still depending on agriculture, and that is how we stand to be developing countries. And being an agriculture dependent country, and which agriculture is the major user of water, so and water is a scarce commodity, so we need to sensitize the users of water, particularly agriculture and associated stakeholders, in every possible ways, and into which these kind of programs would come in handy and helpful. So, and yeah, I would stop here, and I'll expect I'll take up some questions, and we can go into interaction mode. That would be better.
Yeah. Thank you, Murugan, and thank you so much. Lot of takeaways from your short and sweet speech, I will say, your pitch rather. I think without wasting much time, I will give the floor to Dr. Shri Kumar, because the many points which you were talking about, that farmers needs to do this and that, and there's promotion and all. Somewhere you are sitting in the north, Shri Kumar is sitting in the south, so we really have a good combination today, how science and society can be brought together. So Shri Kumar is going to share how and what kind of challenges and opportunities we have to really do a water conservation style of agriculture. Importantly, when the country is rushing towards cash crop farming, how do farmers, small scale farmers, stick to sustenance farming, and then also talk about sustainability in terms of water conservation. And over to you, Shri Kumar, and thank you both, and looking forward to your speech.
Thank you, Mansi. I hope all of you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you, please.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity for participating in this discussion. Now, this series is on water, and I have been invited to talk because I have been in farming. Now, we are talking about farming, agriculture and water today. Now, the reason for discussing water and agriculture today are very important, not just because I'm in farming, but there are much more serious reasons for it. One is that water is crucial to agriculture, of course. More importantly, agriculture occupies so much of our land area. The way we manage water on our agricultural land is crucial to the availability of water, not only for human society, but for all of life. And agriculture itself is in crisis now. We know that there is a crisis in water, even though, as Dr. Murugan Nandam said, we get more than the average rainfall of the world. But of course, our rainfall is limited to 4 months of the year, and the availability of water for the rest of the year depends on how well we manage water. Okay. Now, agriculture is in a crisis for various reasons. We know farm productivity is decreasing, farm incomes are decreasing. The crisis has reached such proportions that about 300,000 farmers have committed suicide in the last 3 decades. Now, the fall in productivity of agriculture is also due to unsustainable practices. There is loss of soil fertility, even scarcity of water, climate change, and all this. Now, the crisis in agriculture and the crisis in water are themselves part of a larger crisis of our entire economy itself being unsustainable. So I would like to see this problem in this larger context, and that is the perspective from which I would like to talk. In fact, I came into farming itself by raising the importance of agriculture in building a sustainable and equitable society. Okay. See, our economy is driven by profit maximization, and there is an endless pursuit of growth. We know that the capacity of the earth to renew itself is limited, and this demand for perpetual growth cannot be sustained. But we have technologies that are extractive. When I say extractive, what I mean is, depending on using non-renewable resources or using renewable resources at a rate greater than the renewal rate, or due to the impacts of all our activities. So any of these 3 things can be called extractive. And we have technologies that can give us a lot through extraction, give us a lot for the present at future cost. As long as we don't come to a consensus that we will check extraction, profit maximization will always encourage extraction because extraction is more profitable than a sustainable harvest. Right? Now, agriculture itself has become extractive because that is also being part of it. That's also part of an extractive economy. Moreover, the impetus or our capacity for extraction has increased enormously since the Industrial Revolution because we have access to fossil fuels, concentrated sources of energy. And as long as fossil fuels are there, the gains of extraction in the non-agricultural sector is much higher than the gains of extraction in the agricultural sector. I'm saying, see, even the agriculture has become extractive now. But since the gains of extraction in the non-agricultural sector are much greater, our workforce has been systematically transferred from agriculture to the other sectors, right? The shift of workforce from agriculture to non-agriculture sector also means that a few people have to provide food for a much larger number of people, right? And we have labor-saving technologies in agriculture also, which has helped this. This, among many other things, has also led to a loss of ecological consciousness because most of the people have been so far removed from agriculture and so far removed from a natural ecosystem, they have lost ecological consciousness, right? And since a smaller number of people have to produce food for a large number of people who are not participating in growing food, productivity at any cost has become our policy. And governments themselves have encouraged unsustainable practices in agriculture, just as they have encouraged unsustainable practices in all other sectors, because we are in pursuit of profit and in pursuit of growth. Yeah. So all the problems of sustainability that we see today, including climate change and the crisis in agriculture and the crisis in water, are part of this, are the consequence of this pursuit of growth, right? So we need to, as long as we committed to this pursuit of growth and pursuit of profit, no technology can solve the problem. Because technology gives us a lot of power. It gives us a lot of power, and so much power also comes with responsibility. When we are in an endless pursuit of growth, we are disregarding that responsibility, right? Yeah, so this is, whatever else I say must be seen against this background. Now, as far as doing agriculture itself sustainably is concerned, and okay, doing agriculture sustainably and using water sustainably, or achieving water security and achieving food security have to be taken together, because as I said before, a lot of our land area is covered by agriculture, and how we use water for our agriculture and how we manage water flows in this land is crucial to the safety of, water security of all of life, not only human life. So in this, we have to integrate agriculture with water management, as Dr. Muruganandam said. Now, this kind of sustainable agriculture is called by various names like natural farming, permaculture, agroecology, and ecological agriculture, right? So they are all based on some common principles, which I will mention now. And after that, I think we can have discussions we'll take questions from the participants and we'll discuss. And I'm not an agricultural scientist. I may not be as capable of answering those questions as Dr. Muruganandam is. One thing, now I just list out the different principles of ecological agriculture. One is growing crops that suit the local ecosystem, right? So now we know, because we have, even for agriculture, we are using water that is carried from very far away using big dams and canal networks. So we have changed the cropping patterns. Even in low rainfall areas, we have come to use water intensive crops, and we have also started giving priority to cash crops rather than food crops. If food crops, I mean, actually there is a conflict between cash crops and food crops, because if cash crops earn more money, farmers would rather grow cash crops rather than food crops. This is happening in my area also. A lot of land that is suitable for growing rice is being used for growing betel nut, areca nut, supari. Right? This is a cash crop and it involves less labor and it fetches more money. Then there are a lot of cases where people, I mean, dry areas, arid areas, semi-arid areas, where millets and pulses used to be grown, and they have shifted to growing rice and sugarcane because water is available from large dams, or in many cases by extracting groundwater. So this should never be done. So growing crops that suit the local ecosystem, one thing. The other thing is multi-cropping and crop rotation in according to with the season. Multi-cropping is important even from the point of view of pest management, right? Because in nature, diversity is the rule. It is we who do monocropping and growth, encourage the growth of pests that like that particular crop. So if we have multi-cropping, there will be a diversity of flora as well as fauna, so that everything will be in a certain balance. There will be no proliferation of a single pest. The other thing important in this is integrating water management with farming, right? So there are some places in dry areas, for example, we should encourage percolation of all the water into as much water as possible into the soil, preferably all the water, and we must have, means of slowing down the flow of water when it rains, using say contour bunds, using a lot of vegetation itself, then having small storages in farm ponds, percolation tanks, etc. In heavy rainfall areas like where I live, we get in 4 months of the monsoon nearly 4,000 mm of rain. So here we have much more than we need, and we have to allow the water to flow in such a way that it doesn't carry soil from our agricultural land or anywhere. So allowing for proper drainage of water itself is the challenge in very high rainfall areas. But even in high rainfall areas, we may have shortage of water in summer because most of the water runs off into the sea. We are quite close to the sea. I am from coastal Karnataka. So, but we have very short rivers between the Western Ghats and the sea. And in these short rivers, there is a possibility of building vented dams, the dams which will be open during the rainy season, and we can impound water during the dry season, so that a lot of it will maintain a higher water table during the dry season, and also make possible irrigation by gravity to a limited extent, right? So the other thing is, when we do water management and farming in an integrated manner, ideally land use planning should be done by taking a watershed or a micro watershed as a unit. So then we can decide which part of this land should be used for growing trees, which part should be reserved for water bodies, which should be used for annuals, etc. But this, of course, given the kind of land ownership we have here, it's a big problem. I think this requires a certain kind of land reforms which takes sustainable use of land into account rather than land ownership, right? So ideally, at the local self-government level, at the lowest level of the government, land should be allotted to people who do farming according to their needs. Land should not be a commodity that can be bought and sold. If someone wants to do agriculture, no one who wants to do agriculture can buy land and do agriculture unless they do commercial agriculture, cash crops, and maybe even extractive agriculture. sustainable agriculture cannot generate the kind of surplus from which you can, recover the investment on buying land. So this is something that we have to seriously think about. It's a long, there are societies in which land is considered a common, and people, the village people allot land to different people according to their needs. If it is done that way, we can really do this land use planning at the level of the watershed. That will be the most scientific and rational way to use land in such a way that agriculture is done well and water is used properly. Yeah, the idea is that runoff should be minimized and soil erosion should be prevented altogether. So this can be done by judicious use of contour trenches and bunds, small ponds, percolation tanks, and wherever possible, in some cases, as in the case of my region, even vented dams. Then in growing things, we must have a judicious combination of perennials and short duration crops. As of now, see, we have become dependent on rice and wheat mainly as our staple foods. A lot of places where millets can be grown with less water and more efficiently, people have switched over to rice and wheat because water has been supplied from far away, or people use groundwater. Water intensive crops using groundwater is actually criminal. Groundwater should never be treated as private property just because, one should not have the right to extract groundwater just because the borewell belongs to one's, is located in one's land. It should be treated as a common property, and there should be a check on extraction of groundwater. In many cases, this kind of check on extraction can be implemented at the local level itself. There are examples of it. You can look up an example of a village in Hivre, in Ahmednagar district of Maharashtra, called Hivre Bazaar. There, the Gram Sabha itself banned the use of groundwater for anything other than drinking purposes for a long time. And once they had built up the water table to a level where limited quantity of it could be used for irrigation, they allowed irrigation, but they continued to ban water intensive crops. If this kind of decisions are taken at the local self-government level with the participation of everyone, it can be implemented properly. And I would like you to look up Hivre Bazaar on the net and see the story of how a very water scarce region was made self-sufficient in a matter of a few years. The other thing is, while doing agriculture, try to have as much diversity as possible. The aim of agriculture should not be just growing food. It should be much more than that. It should be, in addition to growing food, building up soil fertility, building up water security, as well as preserving biodiversity. Because all these things have been neglected, and now it is necessary for us to repair the damage that we have already done. This is the importance of agriculture in building a sustainable society. All this, as I said before, gains of extraction are greater in non-agricultural sector than in the agricultural sector. That's why people have constantly moved away from agriculture. The present number of people who are not doing agriculture is quite large. In India, of course, even now about 50% are dependent on agriculture to some extent. But the trend of people moving away from agriculture is itself a consequence of our industrial revolution based on fossil fuels. It is not a normal trend, and this trend has to be reversed if we are to make our society sustainable, and the role of agriculture in this is very great. If a few people have to produce food for a much greater number, the agriculture will be extractive. And making agriculture sustainable is a very important part of making our entire economy sustainable, right? The other thing is growing crops, not just food crops, our plants, trees and plants must provide us food, fodder, timber, fuel, fiber, medicines, all of these. That means gradually in the project of making our society sustainable, we have to reduce our dependence on non-renewables and replace them with renewables. And most of the renewables come from plant life. So plant life has to provide us more than what we are currently obtaining from it. There is a potential for obtaining much more, and all this was there before we started using fossil fuels. And in a renewable, in a sustainable system, again, we have to build up our capacity to obtain all these things from renewable sources. So this is what we have to do from agriculture. Of course, as of now, since the government policies themselves favor extraction, doing what I'm advocating now is very difficult and very few people are doing it. If only a few people do this, whatever they do will be more than neutralized by all others who are doing extractive agriculture. But if this has to be the norm, then there has to be policy support. Therefore, engaging with the government for this kind of policy is important, but will the government listen to us?
We will take the political matter in the other session, but I think we will have to wind up your part so that we can open the floor. So maybe with your due permission.
Yeah, what I want to say is this. I mean, this is the last point I want to make. See, engaging with the government for favorable policies is important, but it is necessary for people to do this constructive work as activists, even without government support, and that will be part of the education of our people. So,
yes,
suitable. I mean, policies that favor sustainability comes from the people, from the grassroots. Like say, thank you.
Thank you so much, Sri Kumar. We do have you have a lot of points, and I think one very well taken points, and because it is coming from the ground and coming from the heart, and you do bring the political angle, which is a different discussion altogether. We have to take it, we cannot avoid. We do have our discussion today, so I will quickly move on then summarizing your speech. So we have Prutha Machiwal, who is a fourth semester MSc student from Water Science and Governance program in Terry School of Advanced Science, Delhi. And she is really motivated to improve the current shortcomings of water use efficiency in agriculture sector. I'm sure you, and also food security, I'm sure, Prutha, you got some kind of enlightenment today from the speakers here. I would like to invite you on the floor to raise your queries as you rightly mentioned that you are motivated about it. So please go ahead and throw your questions and your thoughts to the speakers of the day. Prutha, over to you.
Thank you. Shall I share my screen? I have a small presentation.
Will you be fine asking questions to the speakers, or do you want to present? Because as a discussant, usually discussants are not presenting. How much do you have to present?
Okay, I just have a presentation of like few slides only.
Okay, please go ahead. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
You will also summarize the speakers, okay, and open the floor for others. Yeah.
So is my screen visible?
Not yet. If anybody is seeing, please confirm to Prutha. I am not seeing. Yes.
Is it now?
Yes, please go ahead.
So yeah, like as our speakers talked about agriculture and water and how important agriculture is, like how important water and agriculture is for the country. So I carried out 2 projects based on my first project.
You have a voice cracking.
Based polyhouse
Your voice is
culture in
cracking.
Nashik city. So the reason, okay, audible now?
Yes, now you are audible.
Yeah, is it on? Now is like, can I speak now?
Please go ahead.
Yeah. So I selected like I did my minor project on polyhouse culture in Nashik city. So for which I selected 3 crops, grapes, capsicum, and strawberry. So in this, like we all know that India is gifted with the heterogeneous platform, like, and we also have regions where we have a varied variety of soil culture where we can cultivate a varied variety of crops in every region possible. So yeah, and also that though we are producing surplus amount of food, we are not able to satisfy the hungers of the poorer section of the society. So that was the reason why I was like farming sector motivated me to think beyond what I have studied and what I would like to study in depth in future. So yeah, so based on that, I selected for Nasik as a region for my study, and in which Nasik city is famous for grapes cultivation. And I also saw very like polyhouse like cultivation over here, like it was carried out on a large scale. So because that was the reason, so I selected this topic. So my objectives were to analyze the crop productivity and water productivity of crops, and to analyze cost benefit of analysis of the crops. So it was observed that grapes are the crops which cannot be grown under the polyhouse cultivation, because grapes needs the sunlight for the sweetness of the berries. So if one has to cultivate under the polyhouse cultivation, then they have to use a plastic polythene culture, like a plastic polythene after the fruiting stage. So it was my first finding of the study that grapes cannot be cultivated under the polyhouse cultivation. And like there are many studies which are stating that it is possible, but if you have that kind of what should I say, technology available for the sweetness, like which can enhance the sweetness of the berries, then in that case only it is possible. And the second thing was, it was that found that the region has been facing climate change, and the farmers have also witnessed that when I carried out my semi-structured interviews. So at that time, farmers told me that the variation in the humidity affects the grapes sweetness. So farmers are facing climate change. So, and it was also found that farmers are using excess water for the cultivation, though it was almost like a large amount of water, or though the crop requirement was. These are some of the photos. Yeah, and my second study was based on the Karnataka region. So Karnataka region is one of the region where water resources are limited, and the state has been agriculture, like the region has a varied variety of topography, due to which it allows farmers to grow a varied range of crops. So yeah, and it is observed that the Karnataka region has been facing crop shift and since 2006, and farmers are mostly shifting towards the water intensive crops, where if we look at the annual rainfall, it is around 600 to 700 mm. Despite the fact the average rainfall is less, farmers are not looking at the average rainfall, and they are shifting towards the most water intensive crop, that is sugarcane and paddy. Um, there has been shift observed in terms of sugarcane and paddy. So through my study, it was found that the sugarcane is the most water intensive crop, and the farmers are shifting towards, and they also need a proper guidance for cultivating this crop, because the water required is the highest for the plant crop. And whereas finger millet is a crop where which can be grown in a short span, but farmers are not aware, and they are not also looking at cultivation of the finger millet. And as well as the policies of Karnataka state are promoting that the farmers should cultivate finger millet, because it is a staple food. It comes in span and can give maximum yield in my presentation. Thank you. And I have few questions.
Please go ahead.
For yeah, so Sri Kumar sir, climate change is severely impacting agriculture. What shifts you think are required to ensure that farmer does not lose out? I would also like to get your thought on crop insurance in India.
I think, thank you, Prutha. Before Sri Kumar answers it, maybe I will just intervene a minute to apologize to all the people present here that we may go overboard the time. Given the situation, we also start a little bit late. Prutha, if you were hearing Dr. Sri Kumar, he had a lot of ideas how to do it, and even technology and AI, which Dr. Murugan was saying. So, I just want to stop here and let the speakers respond. Do you have any other questions? So you can pose all the questions so that we can save time, and the speakers can take the conversation. And rest of the people are encouraged to put their questions on the chat box. So just to be a little bit more time efficient. Thank you. Yes. Prutha, do you have another question? Yeah.
Yeah, two more questions. So, Sri Kumar sir, can you please tell me a little bit about the new Karnataka water policy, and if the policy is new, that if like implementation has been visible or not? And also for Murugananda sir, in spite of various technologies available for water use efficiency, what are the challenges that are being faced by the farmers in uptake of the technology? Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will, just a second, we will first go in the same order as presentation. Thank you. Maybe Murugan sir, would you like to answer first as a first speaker, and then we take Sri Kumar and open the floor, okay?
Yeah, true, no problem. And could you unshare your screen?
Yes, sir, sure.
Yeah, and take up of technologies and technology. Yeah, that last question what you asked towards me, and I can answer that. Then second, I'll move on. And technologies are available, and our technology generation system and dissemination system is somehow it's not having a coordination or coherence between each other. We lack somewhere some trust system is not there, and we don't the lab to land transfer is weak in our country. Probably the researching pattern or researching resources or researching facilities are not converged to the needs of the land system, our kind of actual land system. So in our institute, we have been doing research mainly on farmers field under integrated watershed management. Farmers field and this natural land boundaries called watersheds are our experiments, or kind of experiments and laboratories where we do a lot of experiments at the farmers field, and we come up, we evolve technologies, and again we test it in another farmers field. But in majority cases, and what is happening in lab may not happen in land, actual field. So that gap should be narrowed down at the research field itself, or laboratory, so that farmers adopt them appropriately. And in our country, sad to say that we don't have kind of coordination unit. They are there, but the effective implementation, effective coordination is somehow missing between, could be between states and center, and between different departments of technology generation and extension agencies, all that. If some technology comes up very fast in the chat box, I could see why are we going running towards kind of unsustainable farming patterns, because we don't study the kind of success of the technologies in total from beginning to end. For example, I can talk with this bioflak. Bioflak is a kind of productive and potential technologies which we have imported from other countries and we have customized to our country, all that. But we blindly, it has got some inherent benefits, but we need to understand them. What are those inherent features we may be needing to adjust to the local conditions, which we are missing, and we blindly communicate to the or take to the farmers field, and farmers also happily adopt because in other area it is performing better, and without increasing the capacity or increasing the human resources or training, adequate record training, without training facilities and extending training, these kind of advanced technologies cannot become successful. And we cannot blindly adopt the technology from one area to another, and we need to customize them to our local needs and understand from beginning to end in a kind of what you call this food chain, or kind of complete production to harvest and post harvest, which is very much lacking in many different farming commodities and farming systems. That we need, that the government as a whole and various departments should evolve strategic measures to customize the technologies for specific needs or specific location and specific investment potential. Without which many technologies become failure if once the farmer is pained or he experiences losses, he is not going to going back to the technology, or he is not going to adopt anymore, or you would have lost his production potential, and he will not come back. That's a very widespread scenario we are seeing across the country, and that is one. And other than that, we as a traditionally agriculture country, we have got rich traditional and local wisdom, and there also we have failed to capture the potential of local wisdom and indigenous technical knowledge, and document them categorically and convert them into kind of modern technological knowledge, a modern technical resource or modern technology. There are also a lot of potential in every sector, be it agriculture, be it animal husbandry, be it fisheries. Every sector has got with indigenous wisdom and kind of indigenous technical knowledge, indigenous ecological knowledge, with our own farming communities and farmers. So there also we are lacking. We are slightly inclined towards Western, or whatever Western is doing, then we are trying to kind of imbibe and implement also. It's okay importing technologies, importing knowledge from West, and we can customize to our needs. But at the same time, we cannot lose sight of our traditional wisdom that we need to focus and adopt, because they are all time tested, and it can contribute to water conservation, soil conservation, and increased production. If the marriage between this traditional wisdom and modern technology happens, and our production can have a quantum jump in coming days. And as regard to resilient and as regard to kind of climate change and agriculture production, and as we all know that it's climate change and climate variation is occurring across the country, and this cold line in hills, the cold loving crops are shifting towards higher mountains because of the warming climate and crop line is shifting in the mountains, and this sea level is rising, and sea water quality, marine water quality is also changing, or it ingression of into land masses. All that is happening because of kind of climate change, and for which we need to have a kind of climate resilient and climate compatible crops and varieties and farming, on which many different institutes and ICAR is working, and they are suggesting many different farming patterns and farming systems and cropping patterns and farming techniques to the farmers. But whatever we do, it's very little to this huge country. And our this extension system and our government machinery, institutional arrangement, and political support and policy support is very weak in institutionalizing these climate resilient technologies and cropping pattern taking to the farmers. And yeah, all right. Yeah, please.
Thank you, Murugan. Thanks for the elaborate answer on her question. And I think very well taken that we need a marriage between the tradition and the modern techniques. And you had already talked about the modern techniques which are available. And Shri Kumar was already talking about what is done on the ground. Somewhere we are stuck in doing things. But I think I will request Shri Kumar to take the Karnataka question, because her first question was more pretty much elaborated by you very well what kind of sustainable farming we can take up. And it is very much, by the way, place and place specific, geospatial specific. So over to you, Shri Kumar, because I'm also looking at everybody's time, So yes, please. Do you hear me, Shri Kumar? Because we don't hear you, okay? No, we don't hear you. Is anyone hearing Shri Kumar? Because I don't hear him. Shri Kumar, you are not audible. Say something now. Because you're not mute here, so I don't know why you are not audible. Okay, until then, if there are any other questions, you may please pose and we can collect the question. Till he is getting his audio thing done. We don't hear you, Shri Kumar, okay? Do you hear me? So then if you can please do something like this. Do you hear me, Shri Kumar? Do you hear me? Say yes or put it in the chat box, because we don't hear you, okay? So I don't know how to deal with this situation of your audio, but maybe we can move on, and we can take one or two questions if anybody from the participants you have. Anyone from Paresh, Shriyans, Padmini, anybody, if you have questions, or I have one last question for reserving for all of us. Actually, it's not a question to any speaker, but to all of us to think. Shri Kumar, are you hearing me? If yes, you can just do like this, please. If you are hearing me, please do like this, so that I know at least I am audible to you. Okay, I will have to deal with it independently. Prutha, are you okay with the answer you got from Murugan, and then we can take it up further?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Shri Kumar. Yeah, Shri Kumar, can you say something so that I check? Okay, I think I will put an apology on behalf of Shri Kumar to all of you. that we are unable to hear him, and bring the discussion towards closer, because we are also running late in our presentation and session today. We did start nearly 12 minutes late, so that way we are actually on time to finish it in an hour. But I want to ask all of you as consumers, and rightly pointed by Sri Kumar, that we have actually more mouths to feed than more hands to work on the farm. It is as simple as that. So there is, on one hand, we have the stress. On the other hand, we also have the stress to have more economy generated out of the farming, as Dr. Murugan already mentioned, that we are still dependent for our GDP on the farming. So we have these two situations, and Prutha made a very valid point in her starting comment, that we are actually growing more food than we can eat. At the same time, Dr. Murugan said that we have more rains than actually we need for farming, and still we have problems of actually facing, not only facing food security, but also water insecurity. So we have both the insecurities, food and water insecurity, despite having more rains, despite having more crops, despite having better investments and infrastructures also in agriculture sector. So I guess the discussion has to be something on something else which we are probably missing in both agriculture and water sector. And that's where Sri Kumar's point of political will comes very handy, which we did not discuss it so much. And we have to think about public choices about what we want to grow. Why as a governing policy, and why as citizens we are so motivated to do the cash crops and not work on the sustainable cropping pattern. And it's more about introspection for all of us. So Sri Kumar, I see that you are trying to connect, and you have tried to answer to Prutha on the chat box. So Prutha may like to read the chat box, and I really appreciate that you take that effort to write your comments and response to Prutha on the chat box. If there are any last lines from any one of us, I would like to open the floor to anybody for one last question from anyone from the team also is fine. Anybody from the participant. Otherwise, I'm also ready with discussing our next session and announcing it, because we have very interesting session coming up. So anybody would like to say something at the end, or I can announce the next session? Yeah. Okay. Yes, so there are very beautiful points also raised by Sanjeev Nayak. I see Sri Kumar is also writing constantly, so please have a look at it. And thank you so much all of you for joining. We did have some technical hiccups in the beginning. We are still having some technical hiccup from Sri Kumar's end, but it has been compensated. We really want to discuss all of these issues related to water. We want to encourage youth to take up as a future issue. Water is so much connecting, and it also has diverse fields for you to really engage with. With those lines, I want to appreciate all of you to take out time to come here. I also want to thank the speakers who are here, and our dear discussant who made a beautiful presentation of her work. Wednesdays for Water is a weekly talk series on different topics. You can also decide and suggest us topics, bring us people. But at the same time, we are also looking for people who are really working on the ground and who are working in the science, and how we can bring them together through youths. So our next session, which is the third week of July, we are actually having the soft session, and we are going to talk about some music, some dance related to water. So we will have Manjushri Patil and her team to make a kind of a nritya or on related to a river as life. So with these words, I would like to invite most of you for the next session also. And thank you for coming today. God bless you and take care all. Thank you. And thank you both Sri Kumar and Murugan and Prutha. Thank you so much. Thank you presenters for joining us today and enlightening us with your wisdom. Also thank you all the participants for joining us and making the session interactive. We quickly take you through the citizens who make this collective: Vibhu Prasad Nayak, Fauziya Tarannum, Ganesh Shankar, myself Mansi Bal Bhargav, Rajiv Shah, Gautami Baviskar, Manisha Sharma, Megha Gupta, Srinivas M.R. and Basanta Subaya. We represent Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Hyderabad, Terry School of Advanced Studies, New Delhi, Environmental Design Consultants, Ahmedabad, FluxGen Sustainable Technologies, Bangalore, Counterview, and we are supported by Wikis Water Resources Council. We truly appreciate your support and encouragement in conducting this series, and we hope that you will stay tuned with us through our social media platforms and our website, and you will write to us at our email IDs. Thank you once again to all of you. We look forward to having you in the next session. Please take care of yourself. Bye-bye.